Good morning, everybody. It's Carpo, making my 2,573rd video. No, I really have no idea how many I've made. I'm just like, from the couple of years I've been really making them, I'm just shocked at how many I've made and how I just keep having something to say. And there have been times when I've said, you know, I'm going to abandon YouTube, like I did Facebook, you know, just like I got sick of Facebook because of the negativity, the over negativity and whining and complaining about personal lives, as well as the showing how great their lives are, as well as the advertisements, you know, liking Walmart and yada yada. But mostly it wasn't just the negative people, it was the positive people too, the ones who only posted these airy-fairy pictures of like trees that say, you know, some kind of motivational thing. I like those, but to an extent. You know, there's people that post them every day, and I'm just like, come on. And I think back, and I was one of those people. There was a time when I went through a phase where I was really positive, and I'm still really positive. I just don't play those spirit games, and that's all I can call it. I don't know what else to call it. You know, I'm trying to put a label on how we should be loving and kind and this and that. You know, we're humans, we're political creatures, and we're living our lives. So coming to YouTube allowed me to express myself a little better and to learn a little bit more about the way that people think. And fortunately, that's helped me to see a little bit more about people's ideas and where they're coming from and where their evidences and ideas come from, rather than just reading a book and assuming that the author has something to say. Because people used to read a book and they'd be like, hey, you got to read this book, it's great. But let's take somebody like Sitchin, for example, who wrote, you know, wrote about the Anunnaki and whatnot, and all of this started this whole Nibiru thing. I mean, this all started with Sitchin. I mean, and it's an old idea, but it's, you know, turned into this planet thing. And so for a while I bought into this kind of stuff. And when I first got on YouTube, I really started believing all this shit that I heard. I mean, I was like, wow. And since then, I've met people who are just like, who have come to my channel and said, wow, you know, thanks for speaking about this, because I've only been on YouTube a short time, and everybody's convinced me that the aliens and demons are out to get me, and that the Anunnaki and the Illuminati are all working together, and yada yada. It goes on and on and on. So I've tried to figure out over the last couple of years how to have civil discussions without being negative, without being condescending, and without being rude. And sometimes I end up attacking the subject, and the person takes it personally. I'm going to give you an example because I wrote down this little dialogue between person 1 and person 2 to give you the example of what I mean. Okay, person 1 says, this is what I think, and proceeds to tell you. Person number 2, you're on the right track, buddy, but it's actually this way. You'll see. Person number 1, I respect that view. I just don't believe the same things that you do. Person number 2, that's because you have to read and learn about this more, whatever this may be. Person number 1, I have read about it, and I decided I did not agree with the idea. It didn't resonate with me. Person 2, but the evidence is right in front of your face. How can you not see it? Are you blind? Number 1, I think the evidence is biased. Person number 2, well, I think you are a closed-minded idiot douchebag who refuses to learn. I'm trying to teach you and you won't listen. That's very common. Person number 1, what? Why so hostile? We all have opinions. Person number 2, yeah, but yours are different, so you're an idiot. Now, this isn't something I run across all the time, and people aren't always this way. But it is a pattern that recurs in the truther community, you know, if you want to call it that. And, you know, well, I considered myself a truther for a while, I guess. Not a truther, but a person who wanted to talk about the issues. I started to realize that in order to speak the truth, you have to know the truth. You can't just revert to other YouTube videos or books that you've read. You know, there has to be a consensus among people. What inspired me to make this video was just one random comment from a person last night that said, it was on a video I made the other day about aliens and the moon. And his first line of the comment was, aliens were never here, or what did he say, aliens were never on, Earth, and aliens aren't here now and never were, is what he said. And then went on to talk about Freemasons and stuff like that, and it was a big, long paragraph explaining all this conspiracy BS that I've heard before. Some of it's true, some of it's not, some of it's misunderstood. So we had a little bit of dialogue between there, and finally I left a comment that said, I don't really, it was something, I should just have it in front of me so I can read it. I guess it doesn't matter, though. The point isn't about what the comments were, but it was that I tried to put it in a way that said that the evidence doesn't resonate with me, and I believe that it's bunk, and I believe that a lot of this is untrue. And so he re-quoted me in his last comment and said, what I had said, and said, "That's fucking rude." And then went on to say some more stuff and said at the end, he said, "I'm trying to show you light," or something to the effect of, he used the word light. "I'm trying to show you things. I'm trying to teach you things," is kind of the implication. And this has happened to me a dozen times, 24 times at least, here on YouTube. Somebody who has been studying these deep conspiracy type issues, and some of them aren't conspiracies. I just use that word because people know what I'm talking about. We're talking about fake moon landings and aliens and demons, fallen angels, Anunnaki, Illuminati, reptilians, the church and the Catholic Church and the Vatican, and the pine cones and the pineal gland and the calcification and the fluoride in the water and the chemtrails in the sky. All of this stuff is stuff that I've studied extensively. So it's not like I just jumped into it and said, "No, I don't believe that, it's not true." And then people will send me a link to several videos. There was a separate guy the other day who was talking about chemtrails, and I said, well, I don't believe in that chemtrail theory. I said, I know that they're spraying particulates in the atmosphere in certain locations, which the air currents can carry around the world, and it's probably going on. But what I try to say is that just because you see a line in the sky does not mean it's a chemtrail. And I think it was on the same video. He said, those chemtrails in the sky, they're dumping alien shit on us. And I said, what does that mean? What do you mean by these dumping alien shit on us, And these kinds of ideas, he sent me like 4 or 5 links to videos. And this is another guy that has truth in his name. No offense to cool people that have truth in their screen name, but often some of the people who have the deepest issues with me, in my opinion, are the ones that have truth in their name. I don't know why. It's maybe just because people who are willing to put truth in their screen name assume that they have the truth, which is pretty arrogant, in my opinion. But that's, to each his own, right? And that's how I try to live, is by saying this is my opinion, and I'm not always right, and I'm not trying to push people together and lump them and stereotype folks, because that's just not the way it is. Everybody's different. Because I don't like it when people stereotype me to say that, oh, I'm just a sheeple or another idiot who won't believe this, when I can look back and say, I started studying about the conspiracies of the Freemasons and the Illuminati when I was like 17 years old. I'm almost 40 now. I've been learning about this stuff for a long time, and most of it has lost weight. So I'll hear people bashing the Freemasons, and I'll always stand up for them and be like, think of the Freemasons as like, bashing the Freemasons is like bashing everybody who is involved in any state or government department. That's like saying that everybody who works for the state is out to get you, and it's not true. It's, there's a few people who take advantage of the system. It's always been that way. So any group who's large enough will be infiltrated by those trying to take power. But to think that, like, just the average Freemason who goes down to his lodge and cooks for the homeless or donates to the poor or, does the things that Freemasons do, and then to just say that they're all a bunch of charlatans and thieves and liars trying to take our world over, I feel like I'm obligated to speak up on that, So this is how I feel about conversations and how they go. It doesn't happen very often. But it's pretty annoying when people try to tell you that they're trying to shed light and tell you the truth and the light, and they're telling you things that you've already researched 10, 20 years ago and made a decision that you decided, well, I don't believe this, If I want to use the perfect metaphor for it, it would be just like when Christians confront me. And they'll say that, hey, and they'll leave some Bible quote and say, hey, you might be interested in the Bible because it talks about what you're talking about. And I say, well, no, I'm actually not. I know that the Bible reflects many of these ideas. It doesn't mean that the Bible is authentic Word of God. So that's why we have these, the debates back and forth about the Bible. And I say, I'm not here to sit here and say the Bible's garbage. I'm here to say that if you take the Bible literally, every word, and make assumptions about it and listen to the church, then you're going to misinterpret a lot of it. And that's just my opinion on it. And people will say, well, you're just not there yet. I was there where you're at, and you haven't learned yet. And I try to be as, in general conversation in life about everything, politics, religion, whatever, I try to not be arrogant. I try to be humble and try to word things as kindly as I can when I disagree with someone. That being said, some of my comments can seem a little abrasive, and especially if a person's being abrasive to me. And I'll tell you, if you knew me 20 years ago, I was the most argumentative cuss you'd ever met. I mean, there was no way to win with me. I knew everything. I was 19, 20. I knew what I wanted. I knew what life was about. I knew that people were out to get us. I remember when I was 19 and I was sitting there telling my mom all about the Freemasons and the Illuminati and population control and fluoride and how they're trying to, these Agenda 21 and how they're trying to wipe us all out. And I carried these stupid ideas for years until I realized that even if it is true, what am I going to do about it? I have to live my life, try to make an impact. So instead of regurgitating everybody else's bullshit videos, instead of regurgitating everybody's bullshit books, I sit here and talk about what I think and how I feel in my experience. Some of it's based on what I've learned, some of it's based on what I've experienced. But it's my legitimate opinion in the sense that it's mine, okay? I'm not... When people disagree with me, I don't send them a link to a video to prove my point. It does no good, because these are just... The one guy I was discussing with about the alien, not the guy that said aliens never landed, but the other guy, he was talking about the aliens and how they were fallen angels, and I'm like, where do you get all this stuff? It's just... I've had my own UFO experience. It was pretty amazing. I'm not going to go into details. I made a video about it last summer. When I have these weird little experiences, I don't even really talk much about them, because I know that one person can sit and talk about their experience, and people might listen, but it's not going to do anything to help people understand themselves better. It's like I've heard people tell these great stories about things they've seen and felt and heard, and I know how the mind can twist things. So I'm going to leave on this one note, which is what I said to the first guy that got him to think that I was being rude. I guess it was along the lines that I said that I know where you're coming from. I used to think that until I realized that the human mind creates patterns of what they want to see, and you will continue to see those patterns no matter what. When I was really into numerology and numbers, I saw numbers everywhere. I was making connections and 4s and 9s and 3s and 6s all the time. I mean, if you go back to my videos a year or so ago, I was really into that whole Tarot of the Bohemians and understanding the Yod He Vav He and the idea of Yahweh and where it came from. And I wanted to understand religion. I wanted to understand where religion comes from. I wanted to understand these things deeper. And to do that, you have to step away from YouTube. You have to step away from these, fancy documentaries with music in the background and all these emotional pictures and stuff. You know, if you take some of these truth documentaries, you could condense an hour-long documentary down into 5 minutes of information, which might not even be true. It's usually all this airy-fairy, you know, motion and pictures and really moving ideas and then repeating stuff. And I'm not trying to be offensive here, because a lot of these people are actually just trying to make money. They're trying to make a documentary about stuff to make money. And that's business. That's just life. So we have to look through and see who's trying to make the money. So if there are millions of people out there who think that there's a big conspiracy and that all the Freemasons are out to get them, there are going to be a million people to cater to that fear. I would like to say that we like to think someone's in control. Whether it be God, Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, Mohammed, whatever the hell you believe. But if it's not religious, we want to believe that people are running the world, that the governments actually have things under control, or if not, then the Illuminati must be running the world, because somebody's got to be steering this ship. But if it's not them, then it must be the aliens. The aliens have set it all in motion. And you know what? I haven't discounted any of this. I haven't discounted the fact that much of this is true. What it comes down to is how much proof do you have? What do you really have as evidence besides just somebody's book or another video? And there really is very little. So people are welcome to continue drawing conclusions. I feel like it's my obligation to speak the truth when I hear it. But I also feel like it's my obligation to realize that just because I hear the truth and it resonates doesn't mean it's true. And I don't like to argue anymore, but I have no problem doing so if a person wants to make assumptions. It's like those words. How many times have I heard that? I'm trying to teach you, you know? And it's like, you know, I don't need a teacher half my age, nor do I need a teacher twice my age. I need a teacher in my head, in my body, in my soul. I need a teacher that can follow instructions. I need a teacher who can actually learn, who can actually look at the information. That's me. You know, we have teachers in life, but they teach us a little bit at a time. And I feel like a lot of people have been attaching to these, quote, teachers, these truthers, I should say, and following them, you know, consistently, and not disputing anything they say. And I found a lot of these folks don't even want to have a discussion about the what ifs, if maybe this isn't true, because what it does is that if you negate one of their points, then their whole paradigm collapses. If you say, well, aliens might not be demons, oh, they have to be, because if they weren't, then this and this and this wouldn't be true. So we build these paradigms up and we create them, and it's easy to knock them down. And many of the times when I have a dispute or an argument with somebody, they tell me that I just don't want to break away from my paradigm and my belief system. That to me is the ultimate form of projection. I'm looking at them as they don't want to break away from what they believe is true. Because if you show me the evidence tomorrow, you know, I'll look at it. If it seems reasonable, I'll believe it. But I'm not going to hate an entire group of people, say like Freemasons, just because somebody says that they're trying to rule the world. I know Freemasons, and I know that's bullshit. Nor am I going to say that every government leader is out to destroy us. Let's take the chemtrail thing, for example. People will say, you're just asleep. Can't you look up? All you have to do is look up in the sky. One person said yesterday, if you really want to know, you know, all you have to do is, it's pretty obvious. You just look up in the sky and you'll see the trails. And I said, not only did I look up in the sky, but I got out my pad and pen. I documented the air conditions, the relative humidity, the wind. Looked up on the news channel at the weather to see what the conditions were like on that day, to see if perhaps those lingering contrails are actually condensation rather than chemicals being sprayed on us. And found that that's exactly what was happening in a lot of these cases. I could see how the trails would end at one spot and then start again, and it wasn't that they ever really ended. People talk about like cutting off these sprayers, and I realized that the trails were solid, but then the area that had less moisture would clear out because I'm over the valley. I have a very good view of how chemtrails, contrails work because I live in the Willamette Valley where the Columbia meets the Willamette River. And I'm right by the airport. And I'm right in 2 flight paths. So I observed these things for about a year, and I decided that these are contrails, nothing more. That's just my opinion. Maybe I'm a complete fool, but I did the homework. I didn't just listen to what people were telling me. And that's why it's sad when I have a discussion and people say, well, you just got to look up in the sky. It's like, dude, you can look up in the sky and see a million things. It doesn't mean that what you're seeing is what you think you're seeing. The human mind does create patterns, and we do create illusions and fool ourselves. And I do it too. And so, over the last few years, I've tried really hard not to do it. And every time I hear something that I believe is true, or that, think of something that I think is probably true, I have to distance myself from it because I'm not sure. And it can be painful, very painful, because you wake up each day wondering, okay, what new thing am I going to learn? And how am I going to live today? And you start wondering, are these other people better off? The ones who have drawn conclusions about life. The ones like, this is how it is, this is how it is. And there's nothing else to it. I don't think that that's the right way to live just because you're not growing. Because if you're stuck in your way of thinking, then you're not growing. One of the hardest things to do is to think that you've been lied to, or to realize you've been lied to, and then develop this anger towards those who have lied to you, and then realize maybe you weren't lied to. Maybe you're lying to yourself. And this isn't always the case. So, for those who are conspiracy buffs who may take this personal, I have no doubt that there are elite factors running this world. I understand the banking cartels. I have a book, 800-page book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, which explains everything about the Federal Reserve System and the world economy. I have read Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper, which was one of the ones that started all this talk about some of these conspiracies, which Cooper was kind of ripped off by Alex Jones, who kind of stole his story, and then Cooper got shot in front of his home, so people assumed that the government was trying to shut him up and all this. In the long run, you start to find out that some of these people were just half right, And Alex Jones is the perfect example. He's a guy who everybody says, hey, if you want to hear the truth, you listen to Alex Jones. I say, Alex Jones is a piece of shit. All he is a troublemaker, and he wants people to be angry at the government. He wants people to be angry at everything, but he doesn't have any solutions, And these are the kind of guys who just want everybody to pack firearms and defend themselves against the tyranny of the government that's trying to take away their guns. And that's another good argument, if you even mention that to people. Like, oh, it's not about guns, nobody's trying to take your guns. And they're like, you're just an idiot, you don't see it happening. Like, dude, there's more fucking guns than there have ever been. There's guns everywhere. Guns are like drugs, okay? Guns aren't going away, They made pot illegal through the whole country. Everybody who wants it has it. If guns are illegal, all it's going to do is make the black market larger and more people will have guns. So when people really think these things through, you see that this large conspiracy, there are really, a lot of them are distractions. And I think that the people who are really abusing power, or the real aliens, or whatever you want to, believe is out there, are laughing at us for distracting ourselves by thinking that, aliens are fallen angels and demons and, trying to terraform our planet or steal our resources and all this stuff, and it's just useless thinking. I mean, it has no purpose. And I've found that most of the alien talk comes from channeling, and I don't know what to think about that. But, as far as what do the aliens want, the only way it seems that we can converse is through people's minds. And I don't trust people. I don't trust people's minds. The mind is flawed. So when I see a person channeling, as far as I know, they could be in a delusional trance, just repeating shit that the deepest depths of their minds think. But I also believe in a collective consciousness, this air of knowledge. Like, this experience I'm having right now with this video will always be within the ether. That's what I think, in some form. I don't know what it is, or how it works, but that somebody else can tap into that later. So perhaps people's emotions, people's personalities can be tapped back into by people, say through reincarnation, or maybe there's something there. So it seems like we have little bits and pieces, and I believe most of it. to be, there's a little bit of truth to every lie, and but I'm really, really careful not to draw too many conclusions about what it means, because I don't know. I just don't know. And it has nothing to do with not doing enough research, because that's what people always lead to. You've just got to look at more stuff. You just got to look. And the more videos you watch, the more books you read, the more you're just going to suck yourself into thinking what is real. So to step away from the books, step away from the conspiracies, walk outside, look at the tree, see how it's growing, and observe it compared to the environment around it. What companion plants does it have? Why does the river flow the way it flows? What purpose do these mountains serve, and how do they affect the local environment? And especially, what are animals doing? How are they cleaning themselves, and why? That kind of stuff. Why do they want to be well groomed? And why do peacocks have beautiful feathers? All this shit. These are just little things like, that's why we dress nice, because animals do it. Why wouldn't we do it? There's so many different things I wish I could convey in this, but I really can't. I've already spent 25 minutes here, and I'm just like, but I'm trying to say that I agree that there's a lot of adversity in the world, that there are a lot of problems, that there's something going on, that there's a major shift in climate, that there's perhaps a major shift in all the planets that could be due to, let's say, some perturber, which people call Nibiru. I've seen some very, very interesting ideas, but so far I found that most of the ideas people want to be true are so extraordinary that in order for me to believe it, I'm going to have to experience it. A good example is when people say, I've had this discussion with my mom actually, she said, well, so many people have been abducted, and I say, well, I don't know if that's for sure, or if that's within the mind, because as a person who's used DMT quite a bit, they compare the experience. There's a book called DMT, The Spirit Molecule, by Dr. Rick Strassman. He actually did all these trials with people and compared their experiences, because he found it fascinating that people all around the world had these DMT experiences that were similar. They were similar to near-death experiences and similar to religious experiences. And DMT is produced naturally in the body, so anyway, yada yada. And I started to find out that many of these experiences people have are very similar to a DMT-like experience. And there's something to it. There's something bigger, something greater that we can tap into, but we don't quite understand it. But then people started coming out with all these stupid ideas that we have to decalcify our pineal gland, because it needs to produce DMT, and it helps us to connect with the universe and all. And all this stuff just makes me say, yes, this is stuff I've studied that may be true, but can you show me where the evidence is that it is true? Why is truth so important? Why have I spent a half an hour talking about, what's true? It's because I feel bad for the suckers out there who are just coming into this kind of stuff, who have to wade through all this bullshit to listen to all these different people talking about how sure they are the way the world is, when me, considering myself a semi-intelligent, conscious human being, I know that if my experience can't conclude things for sure, how would I expect everyone else to? If I have had times where I actually made myself believe things that were true, that I thought were true for a long time, and it's heartbreaking when you find out that it's not true. But that's what's led me to be more cautious about what I believe. It's a strength, not a weakness. Changing your mind has become a bad word. Look at it, call it a flip-flopper in government. I respect the flip-floppers because they're going with the information they're given. And that's all we can do. We stand up for what we believe. We speak what we think is true, but we have to just do it in a way that we're not condescending towards one another, because you and me are different humans. We have different experiences. So, 6:30 a.m. Those are my first words of the day. Carpo out. And I wish y'all well.